Hey, happy weekend, y'all. Josh's severe weather. I hope you are having a wonderful weekend and staying warm out there. Man, it is cold, mid 20s here in Raleigh, which in a normal winter would not really be all that cold. It's only a few degrees below average, but this winter has been so warm that every little bit makes a difference. So I am going to kind of unpack what the next week looks like and do some long range forecasting today. Now that we have somewhat quieter weather and certainly a cold one here. So if you could, please subscribe to the YouTube channel as I'm going to be breaking down some more significant weather coming back to areas that don't need it here next week. Two major storms, kind of a 1-2 punch here. We've got a storm moving into the west this weekend that is going to produce some heavy mountain snow. I know my drawing doesn't have it in quite the right spot, but you guys know where the mountains are. But as we get into the middle of next week, we've got storm number one, which is going to pull moisture northward from the Gulf and produce a lot of rainfall here in areas that are dealing with power outages still from the ice storm we had this past week. So the hits keep on coming here for those of you here in the mid-south. From Texas to the Ohio River Valley, we're looking at potentially some heavy rainfall. Farther south on the Gulf Coast, there could be heavier storms and maybe some severe weather Wednesday into Thursday. And then as storm number one cuts up into the Great Lakes, it sends some mild air up to it. So we'll start out with some rain here in the mid-Atlantic once again. But storm number two forms behind it and pulls some colder air in, and we may have a significant East Coast storm next weekend. Very fluid on this forecast, so no guarantees yet, but looks like New England and in the interior of Northeast once again are going to pick up a significant snowfall. Big cities, this is going to be still up in the air for the time being, with it being 6-7 days out. But maybe if the stars align here, maybe the storm track shifts just enough southeast now that the ocean is getting a little bit colder due to this winter weather outbreak, that maybe the mild air over the Atlantic, relatively mild, still cold if you jump in the ocean, trust me. But compared to the land temperatures, we're seeing some cooling in the waters, and that could deflect the storm track a little bit more to the south and east than what we've seen recently with storms that have cut up into Pennsylvania, and then rather than going out to sea, they've been coming up into coastal New England, bringing rainfall to the big cities. Now with the cooler water, we may see more influence coming from the cold where it winds out. So the big cities of the East Coast will have to watch this for next weekend. No guarantees. This is not a monger hype video. This is just, look, here's the changes we are seeing in the overall pattern and what could occur from it. And a few models show this farther south, meaning that parts of the Mid-South, Tennessee, Kentucky, the Appalachians, and Western Virginia and West Virginia could get a little bit of snow here by next weekend as well. So if you are planning to take the sweetheart out early for Valentine's Day weekend and you're in the East, you definitely have some weather I think you need to be watching. So last month ended very warm. As you guys know, these are the temperature departures for the month of January, and very warm across much of Canada, much of the East and the central US. We had departures as much as 10 to 15 degrees above average in parts of New England. The West was cooler with all of the storms that bombarded that region, especially the first 20 days of January. And so despite the fact that we had an ice storm down here and a big winter storm up in New England, it still ended up quite warm. So a very extreme winter, to say the least, here in January. These are current weather conditions across the Northeast. And the white line here is where the 0 degree Fahrenheit line is. So parts of Long Island and all of New England are below zero right now. The northeastern tier of Pennsylvania, much of New York State below zero. The blues indicate 20 degree below zero temperatures Fahrenheit or colder. And we're seeing 35 to 40 degree below zero Fahrenheit. This is the polar vortex sitting right over southeast Canada and New England, producing some of the coldest air that we've seen in years. And there's wind as well. If you tack on the wind chill, we are seeing wind chills of 60 to 70 below zero across parts of the St. Lawrence Valley. Maine, 50 degree below zero wind chills. New Hampshire, 30 to 40 degree below wind chills. Boston, Massachusetts, it feels like it's 30 degrees below zero this morning. That is extremely brutal. New York City, 10 below zero, 20 below zero on Long Island. Central New York, 15 to 25 below zero. Pennsylvania's cold. The Poconos, 20 below zero Fahrenheit. Even down into the mid-Atlantic, Maryland, Delaware, South Jersey, the wind chills are in the single digits to lower teens. And farther south in the southeast, it's chilly here as well, but we don't have the wind that our neighbors to the north have. There's one spot that sticks out like a sore thumb. That is Mount Washington in New Hampshire. And right now, we are having a wind chill of minus 105, which is record breaking. It's possible it could even be a little bit lower at some point. And that is due to 104 mile per hour wind gusts and temperatures of 44 below zero. It got as cold as 47 below zero, which tied the all-time record low. Winds gusted as high as 127 miles per hour. And as you can imagine, whiteout conditions with freezing fog and blowing snow. I can't share the videos, but I'll put a link in there where you can look and see a live video of Mount Washington and how extreme it is. So those of you that want winter, this is certainly winter with the stratosphere dipping down onto Mount Washington at 6,288 feet. And you guys can see that big blob of colder than average air. This is the temperature anomaly map. This indicates that we have temperatures as much as 45 degrees below average Fahrenheit. This cold will be getting wiped out here tonight and tomorrow, though. It'll still be chilly over the southeast and New England, but this time tomorrow morning, we'll be recovering quickly as milder air moves in from a warm front here in the Great Lakes. So much of the country moderates very quickly here by the end of the weekend. And next week starts out milder across the central and eastern U.S., quite a bit milder in central parts of Minnesota, North Dakota, and central Canada. We do have a trough moving into the west, so it will be cooler across the southwest here the first half of next week, and that cold intensifies. At the same time, the warmth intensifies across the east. When you have this change between mild and cold, we typically have a big storm in the center of the country that will produce some severe weather. That's going to be likely the case. At the end of next week into the weekend, it will turn colder in the deep south, and we will start to cool down here in the Ohio Valley. This is the European ensemble. And over the weekend, it does turn significantly colder again over the southeast and even the interior of the northeast as we're back to near or even slightly below the average for next Sunday. And at the end of next weekend, it's going to be chilly again. So in the southeast, cold weekends, mild weeks, kind of back and forth roller coaster weather here over the next several days. And a little bit farther beyond, we see it does bounce back for Valentine's Day with mild air in place over much of the central and eastern U.S., while the west remains cold due to a trough that will continue to be in the west. That is the pattern. So big story, extreme cold goes away in just a day. Temperatures moderate in the east. We have a cool down coming briefly by the weekend next week, and then we're right back to mild again, back to milder than average temperatures until we get to the following weekend, and then it turns colder. So it seems like our weekends is when we're going to see the stormiest weather, which if you're a teacher and you want snow days, maybe isn't what you want to see in the east. But if you are a weekend skier, this is definitely what you want to see. All right, GFS ensemble is going to be kind of more of the same here, a little bit warmer than the European, but still quite mild here in the east. As we get to the weekend, much colder. You can see the extremes on the GFS ensemble are stronger than the extremes on the European, and this is quite cold for next Saturday, about a week from today into Sunday. So we'll definitely have colder weather in place over the east, and then temperatures slowly moderate again for Valentine's Day, where much of the east is above average, much of the west is below average, and really that continues to be the song and dance here this winter. A look at the upper level chart, you can see the polar vortex here over the St. Lawrence Valley this morning. It is going to retreat northeastward and weaken by the time it gets into the Greenland area, and we see much of the nation with above average heights. These heights are indicators of storm tracks, but we do have a significant trough dropping into the west coast here later this weekend. And a significant storm will drop into the southwestern United States here early next week with a weaker storm over the Great Lakes and central Canada. This will allow the ridge to re-strengthen over the east coast, and that's why it's going to get warm again. As we get on into the middle of the week, you see this storm takes that classic cutter track right up into the ridge and pulls mild air up with it. So we are likely going to see some severe weather on the central Gulf Coast states Wednesday into Thursday. There's a second piece of energy that dives down from the Gulf of Alaska right behind the first storm. So we're actually going to see two storms here next week, one across the center of the country, one in the southwest. And the first one weakens as it hits the ridge. We do have kind of a weakness, so there'll still be a storm track into New England. But the second storm looks stronger. And the question mark for this one's going to be how far south and east does it cut? Now, no guarantee of snow in the southeast out of this, except in the mountains. We've seen this storm track again and again where the cold air does not catch up with the moisture, and we just see rain and then cold and dry for the weekend. However, with this track coming up the northeast coast and maybe potential phasing, we could have something to watch here in the northeast on Saturday into early Sunday. This trough here depending on how it all shapes out, could lead to a significant East Coast storm. The question mark is going to be, is it going to be rain for the big city, snow, or a wintry mix? The answer is to be determined. I don't know that yet. And I've seen some disagreements in the models. The GFS showing the same thing, but we have some timing differences. As you can see, the first storm is not as strong in the GFS as the European shows. The second storm is stronger, though, and cuts quite a bit down into the south and east. This is great if you love snow in the Smoky Mountains and the Appalachians. But this is Saturday. You can see it's still pretty mild over New England with these higher than average heights. And this screams rain for the big cities. But if the upper low goes over this region here, a quick change to snow potentially. So stay tuned again on that. And we've got more storminess hitting the west. The southwest will be back into the rain and mountain snow early the following week of the 13th. And mild in the east, so this is definitely a classic pattern that screams severe weather and flooding for parts of the south. And if you watch my video at the beginning of the year, the tornado year of the tornado, this is definitely a setup that could lead to something like that if the ingredients do come into place. All right, we'll look at surface pressure. Surface high over the east today, keeping things quiet and chilly. And then a weak low moves across the Great Lakes into the New England region at the end of the weekend. As we get to early next week, a bigger storm over central Canada, but high pressure in place across the east. So it'll be chilly in the southeast to start the week, but then warming up as we see a return flow to the southwest. As we get into Wednesday, here is where the average of the low pressure systems look like they'll be over Missouri and Arkansas. Second storm follows behind it, kind of following the first track. The first storm goes across New England, the second storm farther south, and this is when the cold air can potentially get pulled down and could lead to some snow in the big cities here next weekend. So again, not a guarantee yet, but a more promising look than what we've seen so far this winter if you want to see snow in the big cities. It warms back up early next week. Then we see multiple storms again marching across the central part of the country here in about a week and a half to 2 weeks. So we'll stay tuned for those. GFS ensemble, a lot like the European, but you can see the storm track with the second storm this weekend is a little bit farther north, and that low pressure track goes right into the interior of the Northeast, meaning rain for the big cities and heavier snow across the interior of New England and Northeast. So again, 100-mile, 200-mile difference could mean the world here for the big cities of the Northeast over the weekend. And then it'll dry out and be chilly here for the end of next weekend. Here's the operational European. So those were the ensembles. That is the average of every possible solution. You can see on the Euro, we've got our storm in the west. We also have a storm coming up the southeast coast. It'll be rain and, just mainly for the coast and then moving out. Here's our next storm, though, for Wednesday. Quite a bit of rain across parts of the mid and deep south. Thunderstorms likely in here, some snow cutting up from the southwest across the panhandle of Oklahoma into Kansas. And this could produce a band of heavy snow over the upper Midwest and into New England on Thursday into Friday. The next storm is going to dig farther south and east. That could lead to some snow showers from Indiana into Tennessee, heavier snow over western Pennsylvania, and potentially, if the European is right and this low deepens, rain going over to maybe a significant snowfall in places like Philly, New York, and Boston as we get to next weekend. So this could be our first major snowstorm for the Northeast if this model run of the European is correct. I've not seen enough consistency, though, to say that that is definitely a guarantee. So this isn't here to overhype things. This is here to just tell you what the models are showing at the time being. The run of the European before showed rain for the big cities, just so you guys can see here. This is rain in Boston, New York, and Philly. The run after it showing snow. And again, the difference is about half a day and about 100 miles. It's not big, but it's big enough to make an impact on what your potential weather looks like. The GFS model is more in line with that European from yesterday, not this morning's European. You can see big storm over the south central U.S. Less snow, by the way, here. On the cool side of it, it's primarily just going to be rain. So Oklahoma, northwest Texas may not get snow if the GFS is right. But that cuts up into New England. We see still a band of significant snow, but it's farther south into Michigan and some icy precipitation over southern Canada into New England. But rain for the big cities Thursday into early Friday. Next storm cuts right through Pennsylvania. Heavy potential snow over Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, even East Tennessee early on Saturday. But this is rain for the big cities, ending maybe as a brief period of some snow. But this low track, again, is 100 miles farther north and west. So a pretty significant difference still a week from today 6, 7 days out between the GFS and the European. You can see the European has it south of Cape Cod and snow for Boston. The GFS has the low somewhere on I-84 in New York State. That's a huge difference. So stay tuned. There's definitely potential here. European snow totals here, you guys can see. We are looking at, that heavy batch of snow in this region and here, cutting north into the lakes. The next wave of snow farther south and east. This is significant snow for Pennsylvania, but this is, again, one model run of the European. Lesser amounts for Philly, New York, and on south. Bigger amounts north and west of the big cities for Saturday into early Sunday. The European ensemble shows the potential for some snow, but it is not super high on Saturday in the big cities. It is higher across the interior Northeast and around the Great Lakes. The GFS, on the other hand, is bringing the heavier band of snow farther east into Canada and weaker here in the Great Lakes for Thursday. As we get to Friday and Saturday storm, the GFS actually has a significant snow way back in the Ohio Valley. So it's either going to be Ohio Valley or interior Northeast, but unlikely it's going to be both. Just not the way things have panned out this winter. But you can see rain for the big cities, no snow for you in New York. This is going to be snow for the big cities of not the big cities, I'm sorry, the interior Northeast and around the Great Lakes, your classic cutter. I don't know which model to believe yet. The GFS, in my opinion, has not done well in the longer range. The European has done a little bit better, but it is not showing any consistency at this point. So again, a little bit too early to make any calls at this point. And the European model ensembles shows, again, better chance for the northern tier of the country, lesser chance in the middle parts of the country. GFS ensemble, kind of the same deal here. Again, your heavier snows average around the Great Lakes, northern New England, but some chance, depending on how some models play out here in the mid-Atlantic, in the Ohio Valley, and into the mid-South as well. All right, let's look at rain here in the Southeast. That's going to be an issue. Weak storm here over the second half of the weekend. More rain across Florida. Could see an inch or so of rain, according to the ensemble. Our next storm is going to produce quite a bit of rain from Texas into the Quad State region here. 1 to 2 inches of rain. Also, maybe some heavy rain on the central Gulf Coast with not one, but 2 storms moving through this region here Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, early Saturday. The GFS ensemble is actually quite a bit more bullish across Oklahoma, less bullish farther south and east across the central Gulf states. So a huge difference between all the ensembles. The operational European, again, you see this lighter amount of snow over the southeast coast, heavier amounts in Florida. European is not super, super wet, but it is pretty wet here from Texas and Oklahoma on into Illinois, as well as on the Gulf Coast. It's showing 4 to 6 inches of rain in the central Gulf states and some heavy rain as well in parts of Georgia and South Carolina out of these 2 storms next week. The GFS has a totally different focus than the European, but shows a massive area of heavy rain, 5 to 6 inches of rain in areas that just got hit with the ice storm here in Arkansas, Missouri, Western Kentucky, downstate Illinois, and Indiana. So 3 to 6 widespread inches if the GFS is right. It does not agree with the European, but it does show that there's going to be a flood risk here again next week. So we'll pin down the areas that will most likely have it. I do want to mention severe weather chances here. Big trough cutting into California here Sunday into Monday. And you can see an upper low closes off in the southwest on Tuesday and into Wednesday. That will allow fast winds aloft to pull moisture into the Gulf states on Wednesday. Instability is not super high in here, but winds aloft are. And as we get to Wednesday night, I think parts of the deep south could see severe weather. Maybe carrying into Thursday, but the ridge winds out, so the Carolinas should not see any severe weather out of this. Maybe some stronger storms possible in Kentucky and Ohio, but again, instability is a big question mark. The storm behind it digs farther south, so that would produce maybe some heavier storms farther east into Alabama, Georgia, northern Florida, into the Carolinas on Friday, and then things will move offshore after that. The SIPS does show, this is an experimental analog run, shows a chance of severe weather, and we're looking not really at tornadoes at this point, but severe winds, and this would be Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, mainly across the central Gulf states and keying in on Alabama. So I'll be watching that for you all, and you can see there will be quite a bit of thunderstorm activity Tuesday night in Texas, Wednesday into Wednesday night across the south, and then things quiet down. The next wave doesn't look like it's going to produce nearly as much lightning with it. Now, in the longer range, I'm going to try to wrap it up here pretty quick. In the longer range, the European shows Certainly some warm air in the east, but colder air moving into the western US. And as we get towards the end of the month of February, the mild air starts to get wiped out, and March looks to start off cooler than average. So maybe our winter is extended, and maybe the groundhog is right, as we have chillier than average temperatures here by the first, second, and third week of March in the east. There's really no warmth showing up here. So we could see some extreme cold for the time of the year into parts of the upper Midwest and the east again in a little over a month from now. The west will remain chilly, so we don't really have a lot of warm according to the European. The GFS does show that cold as well, but it is certainly looking warmer than the European, but it does show it's starting to get wiped out here by the middle of March. And the climate forecast system, which has not done great this winter, by the way, but it's done okay. It's looking too cold in the southeast for next week and the East Coast. In fact, I think it does get cold, but not this cold. As we get into March, though, it shows some extreme cold across central Canada, eastern Canada, and New England. I think it gets colder, but I don't think it's this extreme. I'm leaning more towards the European, which shows chillier than average temperatures and a delayed start to spring, or in the Northeast. In the South, things are already blossoming here. But yeah, we're definitely not done with winter yet, if this is right. So thank you all for your time today. I'm trying to keep my videos a little bit shorter, but I really appreciate y'all's time. If you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, I very much would appreciate that. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank God for putting me on this earth and giving me the gift of being able to share the weather with everybody. And I want to thank God for sending his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for me, so that I am called, Romans 8:28, to be a Christian man who not only shares weather safety information with everybody, but shares the holy word of God and shares my faith with people. And I just want to talk real quick about words and how important they are. Proverbs 18, 20, and 21. Wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. The tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. I don't love to talk, but I'm on YouTube, so obviously I've got to talk. But I got to be very careful with my words. That's what this says. It says that your words can make or break you. I said something the other day to my medical provider. I said, hey, I've done really well this year with my diet and exercise. I've lost 10 pounds. I lost 10 pounds last month. I got more to go. I said, if I keep up this rate, if I lose another 10 pounds each month, I'll be where I want to be this summer. And the guy said to me, he's like, you got to watch your words. There's no if. You're giving yourself a way out. You have to say when it happens. I said, man, you are so right. I need to go back to reading. I mean, my medical provider is a Christian man, but I know everyone isn't, but it's a great point. It's like, you got to be careful about what you say. We've been programmed to say things like if, or can I, or I can't. Instead, we need to be saying when this happens, it's happening. Not can I do something, but how can I do something? It really makes a huge difference. So, be careful in what you say, because whatever comes out of your tongue is what's inside your heart. And I have to be better at how I communicate with people and how I share the word of God with everybody. For me, it's not an if, it's this has already happened. The word is there. The word says, the word has said, not the word may say. So anyway, I'll talk more about that here, but I am trying to keep my videos a few minutes shorter than they have been. So I just wanted to thank you all very much for your time today. Thanks for listening to me if you still have. And if you have any prayer requests, I'm happy to pray for you, even unspoken prayers. I think that all of us sharing faith with each other is what is going to help unite people together. I was not a Christian for a long time. I was very negative in my thoughts and words. I was very spiteful of God. I didn't even believe in him for a while, but the door opened for me when I was about 30 to accept God through Christ, and things have changed. And now I feel the spirit of courage to share those important words with everybody else, because eternal life is there for the taking. When our time on earth here is gone, why leave it up to uncertainty as to what may happen? Let's just know that promise is there for us to have eternal life. And I really thank you all for your time today. God bless you all. Please be safe. Have a great weekend, and we'll chat on Monday. Take care.